Ready? You good? Kirk, Commissioner, you have this underneath your computer. Underneath your computer. No, I just want to make sure you saw that. Good afternoon. It's great to see a full house. I welcome everybody to the city of Coral Gables, your city. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Commissioner Menendez to lead us in honoring. Pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before Ms. Cabrera stands up and presents this presentation, I just want to lay a little bit of the ground rules to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak and we respect everyone's time. I've asked for around 3 minutes per person to speak, if that's possible. If you can finish it a little earlier, it'd be great. We have a time cap of 7:30 this evening, and I want to make sure that everybody has a moment to speak. And if you would like to bundle your times, let's say you're from a specific building or a specific area, please feel free to do that. Ms. Cabrera, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Can IT put up the presentation, please? And I will be 3 minutes myself, so to give everybody else an opportunity to speak, because it really is a rather short presentation. So what I'm showing here is the zoning map for 2007 and then for 2021. The reason why we're showing this is, first of all, to designate the area that we're looking into today, which is specifically the 4 blocks that you see there, which are blocks, and I can't read it, but it's 1, 2, 8, and 10. In 2007, the north side of Biltmore Way was MF2, and the south side of Biltmore Way was MFSA, which you can see that on the legend there. When we did the zoning code cleanup, change, whatever we want to call it, these areas were put together and they were all designated MF4. The next slide is our future land use map. We decided to include this map because I believe it's important that everyone sees that our land use map did not change. This was not changed as part of the code. This, what it was in 2007, it is today in 2021. What's important about this map is that MFSA section south of Biltmore Way has always been a high density use. It stayed that way in the 2021. So these maps did not change. And by the way, this also gives you the density, the future land use map here. The other item that affects what you could build in these 2 sections or these 4 blocks is the site specifics regulation. And the site specific had these 4 blocks in the site specifics in 2007, and they're still in the site specific in 2021. So that did not change. So what did change? This is a chart that summarizes the changes. So I was asked to look at specifically stories, height, the FAR, and the density. In the old zoning code, the MFSA used to allow 13 stories, a height of 150 feet, an FAR of 2.0, and a density of 60 units per acre. MF2, which is the old designation for north of Biltmore, yes.
For clarity, as you work through this, because this is very helpful. MFSA, we're talking about, for purposes of today's discussion, south side.
Of Biltmore Way.
Biltmore Way. So that's the first column. The middle column, MF2, was what the
North side of Biltmore Way.
That's 2007 or pre-2021.
Correct.
And now everything is in the third column, MF4.
In MF4.
Okay.
Right. So the MFSA, which is the old designation for south of Biltmore Way, allowed 13 stories, a height of 150 feet, an FAR of 2.0, and a density of 60 units per acre. The old MF2, which is north of Biltmore Way, allowed 13 stories, up to 16 with med bonus, 150 feet, or 190.5 with med bonus. The FAR varied, but the maximum was 2.5 with med bonus, and 60 units per acre or 75 units per acre with med bonus. So MFSA and MF2 get lumped together, become MF4. So MF4 is north of Biltmore Way and south of Biltmore Way for what we're looking at today. There may be other MF4 properties, but what we're looking at today, those MFSA and MF2 became MF4, and the result was the MFSA picked up the med bonus for stories, no change with the MF2. In the height, the MFSA picked up the med bonus for height. MF2 had med bonus for height previously. The FAR
0.5.
went up, exactly. The MFSA picked up the 0.5 FAR with med bonus. And the density, they picked up the additional 15 units per acre with the med bonus. So they end up at 75. But as you can see, the MF2, the stories, the height, the FAR, the maximum FAR, because it was a table and it varied before, I just want to be clear, and the density did not change, okay?
So, just very quick. I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Is anybody here lost or wants us to repeat it? Because I think it's important that you hear from Surami, because this chart really exemplifies the changes that occurred and what you had before. Does everybody understand? Is there anybody here that does not understand what was just explained? You do not? Okay. Well, can we go over it one more time and explain it again?
I could address his specific question.
Excuse me, Mr. Bernal, do you mind
Bernal.
coming up to the microphone, please?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I am Enrique Bernal. Thank you for allowing me to speak. You're representing that these are the changes from 2007 to 2021. I believe that what you're maybe saying is these are the changes from 2019 to 2021, because I believe in 2007 that the rules were different, that there was a site-specific zoning for north of Biltmore Way, specifically for Coral Way, that said no building over 150 feet could be built in that area. That's my.
Okay, that's what you believe.
That's what I
is
believe.
your interpretation.
And I'd like to get clarity whether we're comparing with 2019 or 2007.
Okay.
It's a good point. So it's the code that was in effect as of 2007 through 2019, or whenever we had the change, 2020?
20.
And then the code that's been in effect since 2020 through today. So that code came into effect in 2007, but it stayed that way until we
2020.
changed it. Exactly.
Does the attorney have an opinion? Was there a change to the code in 2019?
Mr. Bernal, what I would appreciate is just we're not gonna debate back and forth. Let's have a conversation, but let's make sure we keep it as professional as possible. Okay. The gentleman has a question. We're gonna honor that question. We want to understand that question. Okay. Madam City Attorney.
I have to defer to staff about the technicalities of the code. Ms. Cabrera has dived into both codes from 2007, its amended versions, as well as today. So I'm deferring to her response. If her response is that the site specifics existed, then that's the response. I haven't had an independent opportunity to review that.
The site specifics for the 2007 through 2021 and the site specific for 2021, it's still those same 4 properties, the same heights, the same, that has not changed. What happened prior to 2007, I don't know.
Okay. Okay, please continue.
And the last slide is, this is an aerial of the area in question. It's those 4 blocks that are within that red square, rectangle, whatever it is. And basically, it is completely, not completely, but it is very well built out. Buildings of varying heights, but I'm sure between 150 and 190.5 feet. So the effects of this change are questionable.
Okay.
I have a quick question, sort of just unpacking the prior point. To be clear, the chart that we find on, I think it's the second to last page of the presentation, the zoning change summary. Nothing changed in that. We know that MF4 it was created and became the applicable zoning in 2021. With respect to MFSA and MF2, and with respect to the stories, height, FAR, and density, was there any change for that area in 2019 as compared to 2007?
I don't know of any change, Ramon.
The only change was to simplify the FAR, which varied to 2 and 2.5. That was the only change.
In 2019?
No, not for 2019. For the between 2019, there was no change. 2007 was when the last code was adopted. 2021 was when you adopted a different code or an updated code. In between, it was the same 2007 code.
And there was nothing outside of the code in 2019 that influenced the interpretation of the code or otherwise changed the code in any way?
Not in that area. And the specific question was about the size specifics. Those were never changed. Even today, they're the same.
Okay.
So, Ramon, while you're up there, so the section that we're talking about that was MF2, was there any change in any category here? Stories, height, floor area ratio, or density?
It's as it's shown on the slide.
Yeah,
That's
what I said-
strictly from the code.
Only,
No, I'm looking at the chart, 60 units per acre versus 60 units per acre, 75 with med bonus. So the section
the
north
only
of-
change for those 2 blocks was the FAR that varied before it was a sliding scale.
so
It
it's-
became 2.
So
that
in
was
other
the
words,
change.
it's fixed as opposed to a sliding scale?
Yes, which is a technical change. From my perspective, it wasn't a change. It didn't change the maximum, which was still 2.5.
It was also intentional, and the slide is accurate.
And the commission discussed this extensively, because if you remember,
Yes, we did.
the consultant originally had
No FAR?
No
Yeah.
FAR, that's correct.
And because of the leadership of the commission, there's an FAR, and that was changed. So that was clearly discussed.
And I also think for purposes of the discussion today, because we had a prior discussion about this topic that predated this sunshine meeting, and the issue as I see it, based on everything my colleagues have already said at prior meetings, was, and there's 2 issues here, the south side and the north side. The south side is what we have on your chart as MFSA here. The issue there was, as I recall, there was a required Mediterranean
Architecture.
style for the south side that existed on that MFSA already. And so there was no med bonus because you had to do med and you were limited to 13 stories, 150 feet, 2.0 FAR, right?
Right.
Before.
There was no bonus for height. So
There was no bonus,
Yeah.
right? The mistake that occurred, which was an issue that was not discussed, was that issue, really. And so by changing it to MF4, you incorporated that med bonus. And so the concern, as we've heard it from residents, was, well, now you can go to 16 stories and the extra feet and the extra FAR if you have the bonus. And we've all, I think,
The
at
extra
this-
units too.
and the extra units. At this point, I think we've already all said, that was an oversight, that wasn't discussed, and that should go back to what it was. So I think
Yes.
we've all said that. It's not a secret.
We've been very clear, and the vice mayor makes a very good point. At the last commission meeting, not the one today, but the previous one, or the previous one before that, we settled two things very clearly. Number one, that we're gonna have a sunshine meeting, which is why we're here today. And number two, that we're gonna peel back those entitlements from MFSA and go back to its original entitlements, which are clearly delineated here. 13 stories, 150 feet in height, 2.0 FAR, and 60 units per acre. I think I even made a motion on that. So, and I passed the gavel to the vice mayor. So we're doing this today to make sure that everybody has a voice and everybody has their time in the sunshine. But you have five commissioners here who are already have directed staff to push this forward and to repeal the additional benefits and bonuses that were provided in error. And it's an error, it happens. I think I made 4 or 5 errors in the last hour. So there's no one here to blame, and we move forward from it, and we correct this measure. And that's why we're accountable. So
Yeah, I think the other thing that arose during our prior discussion was there was then confusion as to the north side, which is a separate issue. And in looking at that chart, and I don't know if you guys can put it back up just so that everybody has the benefit of seeing it. So now the north side, we're talking about the middle column and MF2, and based on what you're showing me here, really nothing changed other than the change in the
name.
the varied FAR versus fixing it at 2.0, which to Ramon's point, the application of the FAR was discussed because the consultant actually wanted to have no FAR for these buildings and do sort of the Miami 21 approach. And we said we didn't want that we
yeah,
wanted
with the
FAR.
envelope basically controls the FAR.
Right.
And we were adamant about that. We were not in favor of that.
Right.
So
And
there-
I think the very specific question that the residents are having is, were you allowed to build up to 190.5 feet in the old MF2, which you were?
You were. Now, one of the sources of that confusion, and there was a resident, I can't remember what her name was or if she's here today, but she had a document that the city had put out at some point in time that indicated that MF2, so the north side, was 60 units per acre, which it was, but it didn't say anything about med bonus in there. But, you know, part of what we wanted you to clarify today, which I think you've done here, is that under MF2 and on the north side of Biltmore Way, therefore, before the zoning code update, you could go to 75 units per acre with med bonus prior to the zoning code update. The zoning code update did not change anything in that regard.
Correct. The old zoning code did not have the density in the zoning. It has it in the future land use map. So you would have to go there to find the 75 and the
So
60.
now that we've cleared up some of the questions. in
There's two
regards-
discussions today.
Yeah.
There's the south side,
South
which I
side
think
and
we've
the
already
north side.
said where we stand, but then there was confusion as to the north side. So I think at this point, unless anybody has comments, we should hear from residents as to what.
That's why I was
All
going to
right,
leave it in
the
yours.
only clarification I would say for the residents is, what I've done on my handwritten portion, and you don't have a piece of paper to write on, is above the MFSA, I put south on top of the
Right.
column.
Right.
Top of the MF2, I put
That's what I have.
north.
We all did.
Yeah, we all did it, so I'm just sharing that with you. And then on the last column, I put 2021, so that you can see what happened and what we're trying to do to roll it back, no matter what label you put it, so that it gets it back to the point where you have 13 stories, 150 feet, 2.0 FAR, and 60 units per acre, correct? Okay,
Exactly.
so I'm sure Billy has a list of
So, Ms.
folks.
Cabrera, thank you for your presentation, and there might need to be some questions, so please stand by.
Sure.
Mr. Clerk,
Thank you.
let's hear from the residents, please.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, the first speaker we had here is Sue Kowalewski, but she is giving her 3 minutes to Cheryl Gold, who will appear on Zoom.
Ms. Gold, the floor is yours,
We want to take care of those in the room first and then go to Zoom after?
whatever you'd like.
Okay. So, Blanca Famadas? Okay. Alan Donat?
Good evening, sir. The floor is yours.
How are you?
Welcome.
So I've heard a lot of talk about MF and FS and all that kind of stuff. I'm only interested in one thing. Is the height going to be no more than 150 feet? Very simple
On
question.
which side of the
Which side?
block, sir?
On the south or the north side?
On the south side.
That's what we as a commission are moving in that direction. We requested for staff to return back to the
Okay.
original.
And on Valencia, the north side, is it no more than 150 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Well, is
That's
there,
the entire southern block of Biltmore Way. You're saying through to Valencia.
Everything's
Oh, I
south.
see.
do we understand?
Yep, exactly.
I asked a
Yes.
very simple question.
Yes.
Yes.
150 feet.
Yes.
Whole area.
Thank you.
Mr. Enrique Bernal?
Wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Bernal, how are you, sir?
Commissioners, Peter. You know, I really, first of all, would like to thank the commission for having this sunshine meeting. I think it's a really healthy thing, and for reconsidering the changes that were made that, at the very least, were very confusing and in the minds of many of us were misleading. Okay, but given the fact that we're having this meeting, what I would say is, you know, the global learnings for me and many of my colleagues have to do with three very simple items that happened during this zoning update. The zoning update was represented by the consultant, Ms. Platter-Zyberg, as favoring smaller projects. Okay? And that was specifically for the Biltmore section. It wasn't for downtown. It wasn't for the craft section. And then it was said by Mr. Trias that it would not allow for any taller buildings. Okay. Now, globally, as opposed to north and south and everything else, what really happened was that there were two transitional districts. By definition, MF2 and MFSA were transitional districts to take us from urban to residential. And it said very specifically that they allowed for a great variety of heights and everything else so that they would take us into the beautiful residential area. All of a sudden, those two transitional districts got redefined as high height and high density into a new entity that had never been known before. So, you know, right there, you need to realize that for homeowners that bought based on the fact that we're in a transitional district, to all of a sudden be put in front of the plows or the people that want to build tall, high-density buildings, that feels like a betrayal, okay? And I would urge the commission to think about, you know, how do we do it in the future so that, I mean, that is a huge misrepresentation, going from mid-density, variety of heights, to all of a sudden getting defined as high-density, high height, okay? That's number one. The second one is the question about, this change was justified on the basis of the concept of making it consistent with the comprehensive plan, okay? You know, that is a misnomer. The zoning code is supposed to never exceed the comprehensive plan. But there is no requirement that it allows the maximum of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan limits the ability of the commission to exceed that. The zoning code allows for the commission to waive it, but nobody can say that you have to give the maximum in the zoning code. The third point is, many times we have heard that we cannot touch the deeds of the past because of Bert Harris, okay? And for the sake of building trust in the city, we cannot claim Bert Harris without making that a public record. there has to be a standard. But you cannot claim the wolf is coming, right? You have to be able to say, what is the substance of that risk before you try to use it as an excuse to not reconsider something. So I beg you, I think this commission is doing the right thing to reconsider, to revisit, so we all know at the end that fully understanding what was done, what each commissioner votes for. Okay? That didn't happen last time, and I thank you very much for doing it, but I urge you, please, let's not fall into the same thing that has wasted a year of everybody's time because of, we don't have a common language. When we say smaller projects and then we end up with taller buildings, that's not the way citizens see it. When we say that we have to make it consistent with the comprehensive plan, that sounds like a pretty questionable statement. And when we claim Bert Harris, please be prepared to justify it, because the other side of Bert Harris is Bert Harris in reverse for those of us that could get affected. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Clerk?
Marissa Chisena.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Lago. Good evening, commissioners and city staff. Thank you, first of all, for allowing this session meeting and for your time. I moved to Coral Gables. I live on 721 Biltmore Way. I lived also at 625 Biltmore Way at some point. I moved to Coral Gables with my family about 20 years ago, coming from single-family home. We chose to condo lifestyle. And we decided for Biltmore Way because of its residential feel, because it was different from downtown. It was not as congested. You look out the windows and most likely you see some green. You didn't see just other buildings. Also, the proximity, of course, to downtown, while still being a residential neighborhood, not so crowded. So all this is disappearing, in my opinion, and quite quickly in recent times and in future times that I see happening. And we see bigger buildings being approved. We see less and less green space, and definitely far more traffic and congestion. So while the city is promoting green spaces and parks around single-family home neighborhoods, and mind you, single-family homes are lucky; they already have the green spaces right in their backyard. We condo owners seem to be deprived of that, and we seem to be, unfortunately, having to put up with more and more cement. So here are my questions. This neighborhood, like Mr. Bernal just also said, has always been considered a transitional neighborhood, and that's why we also chose to live there. And we have single-family homes south of us, west of us, and north of us. So what I ask is, what prompted the city to approve the highest height and density residential district in the Gables in this section, which is destined to look like Brickell downtown? The process to approve zoning changes in single-family areas requires several meetings with the neighbors, and I know that for a fact. It has happened, for example, with the craft section. The residents' opinion was completely neglected when these changes have come through, and the neighborhood has not been told, hasn't been asked for their opinion, has been, like I said, completely neglected. While the city approved a new zoning code that would urbanize the neighborhood and completely change its character. It has a lot of history as well that would go down the tube. Now, changing pace, the city has also sent out 3 conflicting notices. I appreciate that the city has sent out notices, but they were conflicting. 2 notices would only address the south side of Biltmore Way. In fact, many people on the north side of Biltmore Way and Coral Way didn't think it would apply to them. Then eventually the city sent out another notice addressing it as the Biltmore corridor. And in all honesty, I'm not quite sure if the Biltmore corridor addresses Vilma Way, Coral Way, Valencia, I'm assuming, but I don't know that it has been cleared. It's a new terminology that has been implemented. And I mean, I like it, but I'm not sure if it covers all the three streets. Also, Commissioner Mena suggested at the January meeting that notice would be sent out to all the condo would be informed through their to their associations.
We did.
And the city clerk.
Did do that. We did.
I did not receive anything.
Mr. Manager?
And
She says that she didn't
I can
receive, that her
confirm-
condo did not receive any notice
We sent 1,728 notices twice.
twice.
to residents.
And last night I requested that we send out an email to the entire city to make sure that everyone had the Zoom link for tonight, to make sure that everybody was able to be on this conference, to ensure that their voice would be heard.
And I agree.
By the
I'm
way,
not
just to give you
disputing that.
a little bit of information, which I think is important. You know, the city of Miami, to give you an example, they noticed about 200 feet from the individual who's affected. We noticed 1,500 feet. So we are talking about a significantly much larger base of individuals that we're reaching out to get their feedback. And I think that's important. That was changed a few years ago, but we are the standard in regards to outreach. The only thing that's left to do, and we've talked about it, is to have certified mail. But that would be that'd be rather costly. But we sent out two notices. We sent out an email. We put it on e-news. We put it on the website. We put it on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We put it on our website. So we tried our best. We tried our best. And last night, when during the day, I called the city manager. I said, "Listen, let's send out an email. Let's send out an email to everyone to make sure that we cover every single base, because the last thing I want to hear is that we miss somebody."
And I appreciate that, and I am aware of all this that you just said. However, the three notices never had the Zoom meeting information.
You didn't get one notice?
The three notices, none of them have the Zoom meeting.
Okay, but they have the Zoom link. That's why we sent it
I
yesterday.
understand, but you also have to understand the population on Vilma Way, Coral Way. They're mostly elderly people. They might not even necessarily know how to search on your website, which sometimes can be a little convoluted.
That's why we sent an email.
What I was referring is to the suggestion that Commissioner Maynard made at the last meeting, and city manager said, yes, we do have a system in place to inform condo associations, and that did not happen. So I just ask if, please, in the
Emails were
future.
sent to the condo associations, which we had an email for, and it was placed on e-news, as the mayor said.
I know, I'm just referring to the
But I
condo
want
associations.
to clear something up, because I think it's important. You made a statement, and I want to make sure everyone understands. So when I sat down yesterday with the city manager and our team, I said, okay, let's go down the list to make sure that we have exhausted every opportunity. I asked the manager, did you contact the associations? And he said, yes, we sent not only the residents, but we also sent the associations an email in preparation for today's meeting.
We
I
also
want a
sent an email
board-
to Ms. Gold and Mr. Burnell, also specifically.
I'm on the board of a condo
I
association.
believe that we sent an email also to Ms. Gold and Mr. Burnell, an email that you all acknowledge. Right, there was, yes, we notified you, so, and I believe you acknowledged the email.
Okay, I don't want to
Sarah Gold.
I don't want to keep going back on that, but I can reassure you that condo associations have not been contacted. Most of the condo associations I'm in touch with as a board member, and they have not been contacted. It's not a big issue. You have done a lot of work in putting out the word. I agree with you. Maybe the Zoom meeting could have been put in the notices, and maybe I'm not here to tell you what should be done, but just a simple suggestion, and maybe it doesn't make sense. But I understand that these notices that go out are prepared by the staff, and the commission doesn't see them. So maybe in the future, the commission can review them before they go out. I don't know, just a notice. So,
I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
please.
This is directed to the administration. If we don't have the emails for every condo association, I think we should make an effort going forward to collect the emails for the different condo associations. That way, in the future, we're guaranteed to make sure we contact everybody. It may be just the case that we don't have an email for every single one, so if we don't, we should. So that's-
Commissioner, we are setting up a system that you can forward your email, and we can blanket that whole area. And we'll be presenting that at the March 8th meeting, so you all can see.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. The city planning and zoning board voted in January at the meeting to a recommendation, I shouldn't say voted, they made a recommendation that the commission considers reversing the changes.
Which we're committed to do.
Both sides.
No, but there was no change.
There
to
was
the
no
north
change to
side,
the
man.
second side.
There was no changes to the MF2.
That's what we're trying to explain, man, that the.
So, and that's
Well,
and
the
that's the issue.
bonus-
And that's the issue. And that's the issue that we're having. And that's the issue that we're having. And I'm happy you brought that up, because there's a conversation now that's spilled over into reduction and reducing development rights on MF2, removing the Mediterranean bonus. And that's a conversation that I've been seeing happening. Maybe that conversation can happen in the near future. But today what we're here to do is to make MFSA whole in regards to what was the changes that were made during the zoning change or zoning upgrade or zoning clarification, whatever you want to call it. So in MF2, that stayed the same. What we're addressing today is the MFSA, which is the south side.
I think the important thing, 'cause there's a lot of acronyms that get thrown around, and I
know.
understand it's confusing. Once we reverse what happened on the south side,
Goes back to the way it was.
everything north and south
It's back to the way it
will
was.
have the same rights that it had before the zoning code update.
Okay, so I apologize, I know I'm taking up a little more time, but it's a conversation. So anyway, I understand, and I apologize if I'm not using the correct terminology, but for like when Gables on the Green and Segovia Tower, which are definitely higher than the other buildings on the Biltmore section, were built, they had to ask for a specific, so they had to ask for
Variance?
thank you, in order to be allowed to build higher. But apparently with this today, it doesn't happen because of the MAP bonus. Am I understanding
So
that
anybody on any project in the city, whether it be a single-family home, can ask for a variance.
Right.
Now,
Whether it's approved or not is a
When you
different
have
story.
variance, if I'm not mistaken, you have meetings with the neighbors.
yes,
And
but
if
there's
it's
no
automatically done,
But the discussion we're having, it's not about variances.
I
I don't know what happened on those buildings. That was before I think any of us were on the
Understand.
commission. Those are obviously been there for a long time. But again, and I think the first gentleman that came up, I apologize, I forget your name, really honed in on the issue when he asked the question, is the south side going to be 150 feet, yes or no? The answer is yes. And we've all agreed, and to answer your question, because I think your question at the beginning of your comments today was, what led to changing the height in this area, and how did we get here? And the simple answer, the best answer I can give you, is that on the south side, what led to that increase was an oversight. It was a mistake, and we're committed to fixing it. So that's, hopefully, it addresses that issue. And on the north side, we didn't change anything. And to dovetail that with Dr. Bernal's points about Bert Harris, because I think there's an important distinction there too. If we were to go to the north side now and say there's no bed bonus here, we would absolutely, unequivocally have tremendous exposure on a Bert Harris claim. And a Bert Harris claim is basically a claim where a property owner says, you've taken away rights from me. The reason that would be the case on the north side is because these rights pre-existed the zoning code update. On the south side, and what I said to the city attorney last time was, if we undo the change, we might have a little bit of Bert Harris exposure, but I'm comfortable with it because the reality is that none of these buildings have changed ownership between the zoning code rewrite and now. And so nobody can say that any rights were taken away because they didn't have them to begin with. We then changed the zoning code. There was a mistake, and we're going to fix the mistake. And I think we can, in good faith, explain what the mistake was if we were ever before a judge explaining that. And I'm comfortable, and I think we all said we're comfortable with the minor level of exposure there. So I don't want to get too into the weeds on the legality. But the biggest thing I want everybody that's here to take away tonight is that when we do what we've already said we're going to do, which is on the south side, put it back to how it was, then both north and south will be exactly as they were prior to the zoning code update.
Madam
That's
City,
as clear as I can try to explain it.
Madam City Attorney, when are we expecting to bring back the MFSA change?
That's going to be dependent on what's decided tonight, is how
I
quickly
mean,
you all want to move
we gave
forward.
direction already the last commission meeting. The reason why we're having this today is to make sure we could have everybody could vocalize their opinion, and we could be very clear where we stand as a commission. And that if anybody had any questions or was misinformed, or if anybody wanted to interact with staff, they could sit down and have a conversation with staff. But we were very clear as a commission saying moving forward, when can we bring this back?
So, Mr. Trias, has the ordinance been drafted?
Yeah, there was a question about how to reverse it,
Sure.
right?
And staff was going to look at options.
Right. Was it by re-implementing the med
language.
requirement, which would effectively eliminate the med bonus and therefore put you back where you are,
Right.
but as MF4? Or was it,
Yeah, that
which
was
I think is probably the cleanest way to do it?
Yep.
my recommendation and the draft that we had that we took to planning and zoning fixed those issues within MF4 south of Biltmore Way.
But we asked that you basically come back to us with the proposed ordinance, I guess, at the next meeting, now that we've had this sunshine.
Depending on your direction today, we may change the ordinance, but certainly we're ready.
Well, I'm just going to add to that, is it check all these boxes? Does it put it down to 13 stories, 150 feet, 2.0 FAR, and 60 units per acre?
There is no med bonus.
That-
With
that's-
no bed bonus, yeah.
It's very clear. We talked about this 2 meetings ago, and we actually took a vote on it to move forward on this issue. And I don't know if we need another vote on this issue right now to make it even more clear, but I want to move forward on this, and I want to get this resolved. I want to put this behind us.
Ms. Ramos, I think we had to bring it back as first reading.
It's fine.
Definitely back as first reading, because it
And
changed
then you
significantly.
get 2 chances to fine tune it in case there's any issue of first reading and second reading. We're certainly ready to go for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
We
I'd
have
like
two
to see
meetings
it.
in March.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, the next
Can I
person?
conclude? I'm sorry. I know I took a long time, but there were several other people speaking. I just asked that, as I want to echo Mr. Bernal's comments, and I'll ask for you to consider when new buildings will be built, that you consider the fact that the infrastructure is not there to support all the traffic and everything else that could come along. And please keep in mind that we look out and we don't want to see just cement. We need to see a little bit of sky and a little bit of green. And last question is, I would like for the city to let us know what can be built, exactly what can be built on 719 Biltmore Way and on 730 Coral Way. What is the worst that can happen in those 2 sites, please?
If you'd like, send me an email and copy the commission along with the city manager and our zoning director, and we'll get you all that information.
We've had several requests in the last year, and we've had 3 different responses, so I would like a precise response this time.
If you'd like, you
Thank
can
you.
direct the email to me, and I'll get you a response.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up to speak.
Mr. Clerk,
Mr. Tom O'Malley?
Mr. O'Malley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I asked Billy if he could put back up the Ms. Cabrera slide, because there was something I'm sorry I didn't quite catch. Could you forward to the next slide, please?
Chart?
And the next one?
The zoning change summary?
Yeah, I'm wondering,
Is this what you're looking for?
no, I'm looking for what I have, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
In the,
Go back.
Go back one.
in the upper left-hand corner, there's a cutout that didn't exist in the previous slides. And I was wondering what that was.
Are
In
you
the upper left-hand corner?
talking about the,
Right here, is this cutout, and this did not?
the rounded corner?
Yeah, that wasn't part of the zoning code update. I think that's why it's not in the box.
Can we go back to the previous slide, please?
That's the answer.
Okay, the cutout's not there, so I don't understand.
Yes, it is.
It is,
It's the black dotted line.
yeah.
There's an existing
Okay.
building there, it's not 150 feet high.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry, I wanted to bring this up when you were asking if people had a question. So I'm really asking, what is this? This red line? Okay,
The existing project that is there now.
The garden apartment that is rounded.
The name of the project, yeah.
So what you're saying is the red lines depict the outline of a building? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
because it appears that there's, from this picture, that the code prevailed on one slide, but the code didn't prevail here. I just don't understand, I didn't understand, that's all.
No worries,
All right.
it's okay.
All right.
That's why we're here to help you any way we can. That's why we're having this meeting.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Mr. Clerk,
Mr. John Fullerton?
Mr. Fullerton, it's a pleasure to have you here.
John Fullerton, former architect in Coral Gables since 1968, and so I precede almost all of you, I think, in this realm of work. I've been on the Planning and Zoning Board and the Historic Preservation Board and the Architects Board. A couple of things I have to say. Back, as I recall, in the olden days before the 2007 code, these transitional zoning areas were lower density, as has been discussed here with the 2.0. But the 2.0 didn't mean 150 feet. It meant like 75 feet, if I recall correctly. And then you could get med bonus from there to 1 story. And remember, the med bonuses were divided sometime in the 80s or 90s into 2 separate components. One was the Mediterranean architectural style. The other one was, that was for 0.3 of the 5. And the other one was for just good architectural planning, site planning, landscaping, things like that, beneficial things to the city and the people who lived around it. So those were the 2 components, and you had to comply with both of them to get to the 0.5. You don't just get to put arches on your building and get the med bonus, which in the higher density locations was the 0.5, and it was to take you from 150 feet to something greater. And the density, obviously, the FAR would grow by 0.5%. In addition to that, I wanted to talk about the presentation of this very complex information. Excuse me. I'm sitting maybe 20 feet from that TV set right now. I can't read 2 words on it. And I know there are other people here who are having difficulty as well. And you guys are looking at this. You can't even use a pointer on that TV set. Now, I've complained about this to the Preservation Board for hopefully Peter has gotten our message on the screen coverage that you could put on that would accept a pointer, excuse me, a pointer, a laser pointer. But back in the old days, we used to have boards in front of the public. Somebody could stand at the board and say, I'm talking about this piece of property right here, and how it relates to this piece of property over here. Here you can't do that. And it's frustrating to try to hear the words that are being said, to relate it to a little picture that you can hardly see with the best glasses you have. So those are the 2 or 3 things I wanted to mention, that the density should be related to the adjoining uses. The low-density housing should not be facing height, even the 150 feet height. It should be tied to the lower density, which I think used to be, and maybe Ramon could remind me, it's been a long time, if that wasn't actually something less than 150 feet. And to go up to 190 feet in those areas is unconscionable, and I know you're not going to do that now. So that's comforting.
Mr. Fullerton, I stepped outside 1 second. It wasn't a disrespect. It was that I went to make copies for everyone in the room to make sure that we address your concern. So everybody's gonna get a color copy. Give us about 15 minutes, so everybody can take that home with them.
By the way, I got 3 copies of the letter at home.
Okay.
And emails. So,
You did?
yes.
I'm happy to hear that.
And I don't live anywhere real close to the area in question. So,
We're not perfect, but sometimes we hit a hole in one.
I wanted to piggyback on John's comments. I think, this discussion has been going on for some time now outside this meeting. And it goes back to collectively, we need to continue striving to do better in communicating, because there's a lot of, when things are unclear, then people misunderstand or misinterpret. If we can provide clarity in terms of communicating in a way that people can clearly understand, perhaps all of this could be resolved in a short amount of time instead of having to take so much time of your time and our time, and we can get things done. So I think going forward, we should just continue to strive to find ways to improve.
with the amazing electronics and technology we have today, you'd think that maybe that presentation could be packaged beforehand. And as the presenter is talking about a piece of property, some sort of an indication on all the videos that we see could come up, and you could actually say, I'm talking about this piece of property.
Oh, yeah,
And
no,
how
and
it
I agree
relates.
with you. I had a right on this. My eyesight's
There you go.
no better than yours.
There you go.
And the other thing I wanted to piggyback on with you is, no matter what the maximum zoning rights are here, the concept of compatibility exists throughout the code. So the uses that are applied, if you're building up next to a single-family home, should never be like the Great Wall of China going up to 150 feet. There are supposed to be these transition zones.
That's right.
Up to the higher densities.
That's right.
So despite all these maps and so forth, staff is tasked with the analysis, and so is the Board of Architects, of compatibility with the neighborhoods. So,
That's right. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clerk?
The first speaker on Zoom is Ms. Cheryl Gold.
Ms. Gold, good evening. The floor is yours.
Oh, we can't hear you. You must be muted. Still can't hear you. Your timer's not going now, so we'll figure out the technicalities here in a second.
There we go.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Cheryl Gold. I reside at 721 Biltmore Way. I'm the resident who first discovered the upzoning of the Biltmore section a year ago. I'm here to present facts that will prove the mistakes were multiple and the consequences more significant than what has been admitted. The subject is complex, and I ask your permission for an extra few minutes. I'll submit for the public record my comments along with supporting documents that I don't have the ability to share because I don't know how to share my screen on Zoom. With the abolition of MFSA and MF2 and the creation of MF4, the first major mistake was radically changing the purpose of the zoning district. In the 2007 and 2019 codes, the MFSA and MF2, quote, is to accommodate various forms of multifamily housing to meet the housing needs of a diverse community while ensuring that there is a transition to single-family duplex neighborhood, which protects the integrity of those neighborhoods. But in 2021, the purpose of the new MF4 district is, I quote, to provide a high-density residential district that accommodates various forms of multifamily housing of high height and density with usable areas of landscaped open space to meet the housing needs of an urban and diverse community within close proximity to downtown and the city's most urban areas. The upzoning of our neighborhood from a transitional one to a highly urbanized one incentivizes the demolition of existing buildings consisting of low-rise, garden apartments and duplexes and mid-rises to be replaced solely by high-rises, eliminating sky, air, and light in an area already challenged by flooding that will only increase with sea level rise. The second major mistake relates to the site-specific regulations. Site specifics have always trumped all sections of the zoning code. They exist in the 2007, 2019, and the 2021 zoning districts in the performance standards section, previously Article 4, now Article 2. Historically, they further limited what could be built, not just height and density, but many other regulations, including but not limited to setbacks, architectural character, massing, and lot area minimums. Site-specific regulations are critical in preserving and protecting the neighborhoods throughout the city by requiring a public hearing process, site by site, project by project, including noticing and meeting with neighbors and appearing before the commission. Only through this transparent public process can a developer obtain exemptions from the site specifics, including those that would permit the use of the med bonus. For example, the Segovia Towers and Gables availed themselves of the med bonus increase in height, but only after it went through the public process and only when site specifics were then tailored to that site. In the 2019 zoning change, a new paragraph was inserted as part of the Coral Gables Mediterranean style design standards. Because the zoning code update was passed in multiple segments and ordinances, this mistake went unnoticed. In fact, I just heard Mr. Trias say nothing had changed from 2007, but okay. This mistake was not corrected in 2021. The new paragraph tries to usurp the site-specific regulations that exist in the zoning code zoning districts regulations from time immemorial. The thousands of site-specific regulations are articulated in Appendix A of the zoning code. The conflicting paragraph is added under the med standards that tries to remove the validity of the site-specific regulations that protects thousands of properties throughout the different neighborhoods of Coral Gables, including the Biltmore section. I've heard staff say the reason for the zoning changes in the Biltmore section was to make it compatible with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive land use plan is a guideline of absolute maximum development, which identifies maximum densities that could be supported by future infrastructure. The ultimate use of the comp plan is a limitation and not a goal to be achieved. The governing zoning contains the specific site limitation standards such as uses, heights, and setbacks. In place infrastructure must support said development. These multiple mistakes should be acknowledged and remedied. I have a few suggestions. 1, delete the new paragraph that was added to the med bonus regulations that eliminated site-specific regulations without public awareness. If this paragraph is left in the med bonus section of the zoning code, it will eliminate public input of what governs and is permissible in future developments in the Biltmore section and across the entire city. 2, it doesn't make sense to leave one zone, the MF4, with 2 different sets of regulations on opposite sides of the street. Revert back to MFSA on the south and remove the ability of the med bonus Fahrenheit increases. Change the purpose of the district back to the original language for a transitional neighborhood that protects the single family and townhouse areas. 3, since the blocks on the north cannot revert back to MF2 because now the new MF2 zoning district relates to townhouses, keep MF4 on the north, but change the purpose of the district to the language of the original MF2 and MFSA for a transitional neighborhood, not an urban neighborhood. 4, another option is to keep both north and south as MF4, but with A and B or 1 and 2 designations with the former purpose reinstated. 5, and this is the last one I will suggest, and you may, of course, have some other options you want to explore, a holistic approach to planning a sustainable and resilient neighborhood, retaining the existing scale and transitional character. In summary, the mistake is about a whole lot more than increased height and FAR for properties south of Biltmore Way. It is about the character of neighborhoods, community, quality of life, and property values. Will Coral Gables become a carbon copy of Miami with massive buildings and extreme density, or will it retain the scale, charm, and mature tree canopy of the City Beautiful? I hope tonight's opportunity to share information, and that goes both ways, will lead to a review of the multiple mistakes and the adoption of remedies and a commitment to full transparency and a democratic process going forward. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Gold. Mr. Clerk?
Next speaker is Mr. Brett Gillis.
Can I ask one question before Mr. Gillis goes? One quick question. We see, and this is not really for Ms. Gold, although it pertains to something she mentioned. Hello? 1 second, Mr. Gillis. We have, I'm looking at this zoning change summary, and we're comparing how, let's say, for instance, the South Block was 13 stories, 150 in height, 2.0 FAR, 60 units an acre, without med bonus. And after we take a vote on this, all signs seem to indicate that it will revert to exactly that. What role do the district descriptions truly play in our approval or non-approval of site plans, et cetera? In other words, what difference does it make that it used to say to provide, or they used to say something about transitional, and now it says to provide a high density ... of urban and diverse? If at the end of the day it's 1313, 150, 150, 2.0, 2.0, 60, 60, what's the role that plays? Does it play any role at all? Those descriptions of these areas?
A very small role, and if I can, I want to thank Mr. Fulton. What a great architect he was. Now he's retired, but when he worked on this, and I think probably you're thinking of the 2004 study, the MFSA area study went all the way south to Burr Road. So in that big area, a lot of things happen. Now keep in mind, we're only talking about the 4 blocks of the northernmost area. So those transitions, all that talk about, that's there. I mean, that hasn't changed, and that was there with the comprehensive plan, etc. We're only focusing on 2 blocks south of Biltmore Way and 2 blocks north of Biltmore Way. That's the whole discussion.
But
Yeah.
If I understood Commissioner Ford's question,
Yeah.
I think the point he's trying to make is whether it's described as mid, high, transition, whatever it's described as, you're limited by 150 feet.
Yes.
You're limited by the FAR.
In other words, are you going to be able to build a building on a parcel now that you wouldn't have been able to build before, because now that description says to provide a high density ... urban and diverse, et cetera?
No, maybe I was not clear enough. The description was wider because before it dealt with a bigger area with multiple things in it. Now we're talking about a narrower area, so the description was made over narrower. If you choose to change the description, you can do that too.
Well,
but I don't think it will have any effect.
Yeah, but it depends if it makes any difference at all.
I don't think so. Certainly, if somebody feels differently, they could propose it.
Also, sorry, why don't we go ahead and
I
finish?
mean, this is an issue about labels. I mean, I think what really matters is the prescription that's within it. And we're talking about density, FAR, and height. Those are the big issues that need to be addressed on the south side.
And I think the other very important point, the site specifics, any site specifics that existed continue to exist. So if there's a site-specific restriction on any individual property that says it can only do X, Y, or Z, that was not changed. That continues in place. I just walked over to 100% confirm that, and it was confirmed for me. So Ms. Gold had some comments about site specifics. Those continue. Those remain in place.
Yes. Mr. Clerk?
Next speaker is Mr. Brett Gillis.
Mr. Gillis, the floor is yours. Good evening.
Good evening. This is Brett Gillis. I had just to confirm a question here. If I'm understanding correctly, the maximum height is 150 feet and the maximum FAR is 2.5. Is that what we're talking about?
No.
Depends.
No.
No.
I heard earlier 150 feet and FAR of 2.5.
It's on the chart, Mr. Gillis. I know you're not here. Again, on the south side, it will go back to 150 feet and 2.0 FAR.
And 60 unit density with no med bonus option.
Right. On the north side, it will continue to be
150 feet.
150 feet without med bonus, 2.0 without med bonus, and then 190 feet or 2.5 with med bonus, which is what it was before and will continue to be now. That's
Along
for the
with-
north side.
Okay.
Along with 75 units an acre with med bonus.
So we're essentially just turning back time to where it was.
We're turning back time on the MFSA, which is the south side, which is exactly where the error occurred. We are not touching MF2.
Okay. And my next question, though, is with this new zoning code, have you adjusted how you're defining the maximum amount of feet? For instance, I remember before we had issues where.
Mr. Gillis, could you speak up? I'm sorry, it's very hard to hear you.
Yeah, I'm having trouble
Okay.
as well.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, thank you. So previously in the before the zoning code update or rewrite, there was incongruency in the code about whether we were talking habitable feet or total feet. So whenever you tell residents maximum of 150 feet for the south and for the north 190, just to confirm that that's now being described as habitable. Is that correct? Or is it the total feet with the mechanics and roof features and all of that?
I think we need staff to
Director
help us.
Trias, will you please step up here, please? I think the question he's asking is whether mechanical on a rooftop or a parapet is within the 150 feet.
I believe it's ancillary structures.
Okay.
Can you explain what that means so that people understand?
Well, different areas of the code define it differently. The site specifics, which is what everybody here appears to be going to, talk about 150 feet, period. Now, in other areas of the code, it talks about habitable height, additional mechanical
But here we're
equipment.
talking about 150 feet is the total maximum allowable height, including air conditioning structures, cooling towers, a parapet.
And that's really a policy choice up to you. I mean, if you want to make it very clear there is 150 feet maximum height, that's what we will do.
What has been the zoning department's interpretation in the past in regards to a project in this area? Do they dictate it at 150 feet habitable, or do they dictate 150 feet habitable and maybe 10 feet additional for structures like a cooling tower, for example?
Right, if we were gonna use only the site specifics, it would be the maximum of 150 feet, period.
Including the cooling towers and
Yes.
all?
Parking.
Now, like I said, it's up to you. You can make that as clear as you want.
No, to me, when you ask me, I can make it as clear as I want to be. I want to return back to the way it was.
But this is not specific to this zone. This is the entire city,
I'm just
this
saying.
question.
No, the different areas of the city have different rules.
Right.
If you do a mixed-use building, for example, there are different rules.
Of course.
I'm just saying here, in this particular case, 150 feet means 150 feet.
Okay. So that means habitable along with any structures on top of the roof. It has to be 150 feet.
Yeah, I hope that you will include that in your direction to staff, though, because I do not believe that that has been happening throughout the city over the years. That's been an issue that residents have had, because whenever you tell somebody, I'm personally am involved in historic preservation, planning, and zoning, so I know to look for these type of nuances. But if you tell a resident that knows nothing about planning and zoning that the maximum height is 150, they think that that's the top of the parapet, the top of any feature. In other words, above this amount of feet is the sky. That's what me as an individual, or I think many residents, would consider a maximum height. It's the maximum of everything that has to do with that building.
Okay.
So that was the first point. The next one is I didn't notice, and again, I'm sorry I couldn't be there today, but is there any mention of the maximum number of floors? We're not talking about maximum number of floors anymore. Is that right?
It says here stories 13. And then obviously on the MF2, it says 13. With a med bonus, it goes to 16. I will save you, I will have staff send you, or our office send you this breakdown so you can have it for your records.
Okay, because I'm having a hard time understanding how, especially in the north side of Biltmore Way, with the amount of parcels, I looked at the square footage on the property appraiser. With an FAR maximum of only 2.5, I don't see how many of these buildings are going to reach that 190 feet as it is. So my concern.
And that's correct, and that's the point that we made. I would like to, Brett, if you could do me a favor, and I'd hope that Dr. Bernal will listen to this. This is important, because Dr. Bernal and I spoke about this multiple times in my office. Repeat what you just said right now. It's important, please.
That the parcels as they stand now, it's going to be very difficult for any of them to reach 190 feet with 2.5 FAR. So my concern becomes the PAD program. That's going to be the thing that is going to get the residents on this whole thing going on here, because I haven't heard any mention about this, where there could be assemblages that take place, and then they're going to be open to the PAD program if they have enough square footage. So I would ask that staff addresses that, because I could see this 2.5 FAR going completely out the window, because if they wanted to do that, they could have been doing it for years and it didn't happen. So I would like to know what the new code allows that the old code didn't in terms of the PAD program, and with this new description that the neighborhood has been given about the urban nature of the neighborhood. I really think that this is going to be the Pandora's box here.
I think there's a lot of hypotheticals, and I think that we need to focus on returning MFSA back to its original intent. I could swing it over to the city attorney, but I think that's a longer conversation.
Mayor, if I may say, if you have a pad, you're increasing the area of the property, which means that you'll have a bigger building, but more footprint, but not necessarily as high. So unless you have a very narrow, thin, small tower, it will not reach.
And let me address this with this, Madam City Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Give me examples of two of the last pads that were approved in the city. What the sizes were, over an acre of land?
Well, they also always have to be over 10,000 square feet.
Or they've
The
been,
last one that was approved,
was it,
I could do a quick search, but off the top of my
go
head.
ahead,
The PDs have to be over an acre.
over an
Or an
acre?
acre.
Or an acre.
So to understand that, you have to find a piece of property that's over 1 acre in this area, or buy buildings, assemble them, and knock them down to have 1 acre to be considered a pad.
And Mayor, that's slightly over 43,000 square feet, which means you have a very large piece of property. Pads are 1 acre.
Yes.
43,560 square feet. And then the building is proportionally bigger. So being proportionally bigger, it will be lower. So it's not that you're adding a pad and not adding area.
In other words, if somebody assembles that amount of land, they're not going to build a skinny tall tower in the middle of it. It's going to be
You're not going to build a spire. It's not really
They
effective.
could apply to build whatever they want.
So,
That's
Mr.
the point
Gillis.
of a pad. That's the whole
The
problem.
last,
Mr. Gilles' question was the change, I believe that was the question from the previous code.
Yes.
The change that we did for PAD was to narrow the amendments, to make it more difficult to make amendments. So whatever the commission approves is more certain to remain. That was the change that was
yeah,
made.
the last pad we approved was outside of this area, which was right off Segovia. You know, you were talking about the little town, they're not
Gables
townhomes.
Village, yes, I
Gables
just found
Village.
it, December.
So, Mr. Clerk, next
Gable
person.
Station also.
Next
I had
person.
one more point, please.
Okay, then go
I
ahead,
didn't finish.
make your point, please.
Okay, so actually then, in terms of a pad, if a developer wanted to come in and assemble properties, is it still true that 150 feet on the south and 190 on the north, they could still apply to exceed that, and with commission approval, it could be granted. So really, there isn't a height maximum.
Well, you're asking
I mean,
if
but-
somebody
yeah.
can ask to wait, like,
The commission can also, the commission can also approve 200 feet.
Right.
Just like they can approve a pad.
that's not,
The commission would have to make a change of the comp plan to
Right.
approve 200 feet.
But I think what we need to do here is we need to concentrate on why we're here today.
yeah, I agree.
And the last thing I want to do is strike fear in anybody who's here that that we're going to start approving a litany of projects that are out of scale. Let's concentrate on why we're here today. We're here to correct an error that happened, and I think that we should concentrate on that issue. If you want to talk about other zoning issues, I welcome to come to my office. We can
Well,
sit down
that's-
with our.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Works,
sir.
That's
Mr.
not
Gillis,
how this was
it works the
advertised.
same in this area as it does in the rest of the city. There's a zoning code, There's certain requirements for all of these elements, height, FAR, et cetera, and there's pads. It's the same as anywhere else.
And at the end of the day, it has to come before the commission for ratification, so that's the way it works.
Okay, well, that's not on your presentation, so I would just.
Because that's not a
That's
topic we're
that's not what
discussing
we're
today.
addressing today, Mr. Gillis. We're not addressing
You're
pads.
talking about the north and the south of Biltmore Way, and that is a potential thing that could happen there because.
That
there
can happen
already-
anywhere, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Mr. Clerk.
Next speaker is Bentones Nay.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I will be brief. I want to say thank you to the first gentleman who spoke and his suggestion about sending out the materials and information to everyone ahead of time would make for more efficient meetings and also allow all the citizens to be a lot more informed. And I also wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pointing out that, yes, we're here to correct errors. And on that count, I think Cheryl Gold did an excellent job of articulating what the errors have been and also making some very good suggestions regarding site specifics and what needs to be done to correct the errors and also to have a much more democratic and transparent process, which will definitely add to making the city more beautiful in addition to having the trees. And that's basically what I wanted to say. I wanted to support the suggestions that were made and let you know that I appreciate your considering these things.
Thank you for joining us. Have a
Oh.
wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So we'll close the public comment unless anyone here would like to say something else. Mr. Fullerton? Yes, sir.
You mentioned 16 stories or 150 feet or whatever.
In regards to
Well, height.
and you're talking about
limitation.
MF2, correct?
Yeah, I think you're doing the right thing by what you're talking about, but the difference between 16 stories and any foot limitation is bogus because 16 stories of office space is a lot different from 16 stories of residential. So if somebody wants to build a 16-story building, they want to build an office building, it's going to be several feet higher than a 16-story residential building. It's just a technical
Okay,
difference.
and I understand that, but let's
So I think
let's talk about that really quickly. So you have limitations. You have 150 feet, and then if you have a med bonus on MF2, it goes to 190 feet. You have 13 stories, and you have 16 stories if you get the med bonus. Like Mr. Brett Gillis said, he made a very good point. You have limitations based on your FAR. So just because you can go higher, you're never going to get to that level because your FAR is going to be consumed by the floors moving up. And you know that you're an architect, and can you acknowledge that, so people won't be so concerned?
No, I understand it. I just say the difference between stories and height in feet is an important discrimination.
Of course. But the whole point is that for a developer to come and get, for example, 16 stories, that's what's allowed on MF2.
Right.
They would have to design the building in a Mediterranean style.
Correct. Well, no.
And they would.
Oh, to go from 50, 150.
To go from 13 stories or
To
150
60,
feet
correct.
to 190 feet, they'd have to design it in a Mediterranean style.
Yes.
And their max FAR, including the med bonus, would be 2.5.
No, I understand.
So the limitations, as Mr. Gillis said, and everyone here has understood, you're going to get to the point where you can't continue to build because you run out of FAR. And that's why I think a lot of the buildings would never reach their maximum potential.
And that's why we rejected the recommendation of eliminating FAR from this, actually. It was for that very reason, because we wanted to retain that control over what could be built there.
By the way, that was something that came before us. It was a recommendation by the group of professionals. They said, remove the FAR. Because obviously, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the commission, it would open up Pandora's box in ensuring that a building will be 16 stories, because they would use every last drop to get to the 16 story.
Good point.
And I applaud the prior, it was a prior commission that kept the FAR limitation, and I applaud that. and I'm glad that you did. I mean, if you look at the footprint of the Segovia Tower, piece of property is pretty big for the size of the tower on there.
Not to
It's a-
prolong
and
it,
it's
but
example.
now that you've taken away the mid-bonus, what kind of architecture do you expect to get? Very
It's not,
contemporary.
so the distinction is the following, and I was trying to make this point earlier. It's not that we took away the med bonus. There was a requirement already on the south side that they had
For
to have
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean.
Design.
And so that's why I want to make sure we go back to that. So you still have Mediterranean style without the bonus, which is what we had before.
And remember, I don't want to rehash this, but I will bring it back at this moment. Miracle Mile was scheduled to be 6 or 7 stories, and this commission pushed back on that idea and kept it low rise
That was a great,
to ensure that
Decision.
the character wasn't compromised of Miracle Mile.
Yeah.
So this is an error that was made on MFSA on the south side, and we're here to correct it. So I appreciate your guidance on the issue. Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate all your efforts on this.
Oh, please, thank you.
Mayor,
sir.
one last point.
Always.
As we had discussed before, the Mediterranean incentives, the architecture, not the bonus, the architecture was required in MFSA.
Yes.
I assume that that's something that you would like to continue to.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Ma'am, I think
That would allow us to come back 100% to what it was before.
we have two
And
more.
we will do that,
We have
Vice
two
Mayor.
more speakers. Would you like to speak?
Hello,
Good evening. Thank
My
you for
name-
joining us.
Thank you. My name is Blanca Famadas. I'm a resident and a board member of Valencia Grande. I wrote to you regarding not receiving the notice, so thank you for making note of that. I think it's a good idea to collect all those emails. I want to echo Cheryl Gold, and I want to make sure that we go back to something, to me, very simple. If it doesn't make a difference what the purpose is, all the other, the density, the height, the FAR, all of these things, why was it changed? And why can it not go back to what it was, the mid-density versus the urban? I think that there is an intention, and words do mean something, and the description is important. So if we're going to reverse it, we should reverse it back to what it was. That's just my comment. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I have no issues, and we talked about it here already about, removing the label and going back to the previous label. But what's important here is not the label. What's important here is the reduction in the FAR, the reduction in the height, and the reduction in the stories, along with the reduction in the unit count, which is critical.
And I think the answer to that really is because these designations, MF4 included, exist elsewhere in the city as the zoning designation. And so,
Want to differentiate.
you want it to be that these elements, right, the 13 stories, the 150 feet, the 2.0 FAR, whether or not it has med bonus or not, that these things are consistent across designations within the city, regardless of what that other description says or doesn't say. The idea is that everything that's MF4 should have these elements as opposed to inconsistency, so that way on future meetings, it's clearer. I think that was originally the goal of some of these changes in the zoning code update that obviously, this aspect of it was obviously not handled well.
Right. Well, I mean, this commission's also spoken about Mediterranean means Mediterranean. So the styling doesn't mean some interpretation of Mediterranean that makes it not Mediterranean anymore. So I think staff has that direction very clearly.
And it's coming back to
Going
the next
forward.
commission meeting.
We propose to go back to the Mediterranean requirement, which will take care of the issue of height, the issue of stories, the issue of FAR, and the issue of density. And we'll revert back to what it was before.
Perfect. Before we adjourn, we have one more. Don't worry, I'm not going to miss Ms. Gold. I know she wants to speak again. We have one more speaker. It's Ms. Gold. Please give her the floor. Ms. Gold, good evening again.
Good evening again, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak again.
Always. It's a pleasure.
I have a couple of comments after I've heard everything being discussed. One, I would like Mr. Trias says he didn't know of any changes that were made in 2019. No changes made in 2019. Yet this paragraph, this brand new paragraph that never existed that I pointed out, that does have a huge effect on site specifics in the Mediterranean standards. Is he saying that that wasn't added? Is this a figment of my imagination? He said there were no changes.
Gold.
But this,
Will you,
this can undermine everything in every neighborhood in the city. So I think we should clarify that.
Ms. Gold, will you allow Mr. Trias to respond, please? Mr. Trias.
I'm speaking of the time that the commission took action on first reading and second reading, which it was in 2021. There were multiple drafts that were prepared prior to that by the consultant. Maybe that's what Ms. Gold is referring to, but the official action was taken later.
Mr. Trias, I asked you over on the side to confirm, but I'll ask you to confirm.
Sure.
For the benefit of the public, the site specifics that existed continue.
In those 4 blocks, they continue, no changes.
Uninterrupted, correct? The same as they've been.
Yes.
So is Mr. Trias, I understand the site specifics exist in Appendix A. They're all through the code. But is there isn't a paragraph in that would undermine, okay, the site specifics that was put into the Mediterranean bonus. And I even quoted the section. So is he saying that it doesn't exist? It was a part of a draft, but it was never inserted permanently? It doesn't exist?
I'm not 100% I understand exactly, so I want to bring Mr. Trias up to see if he can provide a little bit of clarity on this issue.
Mayor, I hate to say this, but I do not understand what is being asked.
Okay. Mr. Trias, hold on one second. Just stay here 1 second, please. Ms. Gold, can you hear me?
Or let me rephrase my answer. If Ms. Gold has some particular part of the code that she wants to review with staff, we'll be happy to do that and provide a better answer.
That's what I was going to try to say. I think we lost her.
No, she's there.
She's there? She on mute?
No.
Ms. Gold, can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. We're listening to you, please. We want to get to the bottom of this.
Is there a
because I have communicated over the last year with staff, for instance, about what's possible to build on 719. And I got 3 different answers. I got one opinion from the city attorney that within 24 hours, I was told by planning is irrelevant to the question. Then I got another explanation from Cerami. And then I got a 3rd chart from Mr. Trias. Nobody can still tell me what can be built on 719. You, Mr. Mayor, offered earlier to say, send the request to you, but I think you were on some of those emails. This is a year later and we still don't know what can be built on 730 Carl Way, what can be built on 719. And I will not retract what I said about this paragraph until Mr. Trias puts in writing that this paragraph does not exist.
Can you do me a favor, Ms. Gold, please? Can you send the commission, along with the city attorney and the city manager and Mr. Trias and Ms. Cabrera, can you send us a screenshot of that paragraph that you're talking about so we can get to the bottom of this issue and make sure that... Go ahead.
I will, Nick. I'll send you my comments. I'll send you my backup documents.
And I don't have, and I will put it on the next agenda. I will have a response for you and I'll put it on the next agenda for the commission meeting so we can do it in a transparent way before the community. Okay? So you can get an answer for your concerns.
And Ms. Gould, just so the record's complete, what's the section? So
the section number.
So it's not lost in, so we don't change what section it is later, or somebody says they thought you were talking about something else?
It's a good point, Commissioner.
Hold on a minute, please. I have to go back to pick that out. It's part of the Coral Gables Mediterranean style design standards.
Okay, I think that's chapter 5. Let's.
But what is the paragraph? Because it's...
There's many subparagraphs there.
I don't have that right here.
So why don't you send me that email, and I give you my word that I'm going to sponsor this item under under the mayor's comments, and we will get a response that will be put on the record at the next commission meeting. That's number one. Number one.
Find out. I will give you that
Okay,
information.
Ms. Gold, and the second point that I want to offer to get some clarity, because everyone should get a response. You stated that 719 and 730 Coral Way that you've not been able to get a clear-cut response from the city in regards to what can be developed on that piece of property. I
Two
want you to.
properties, 719 and 730, yeah.
Yes, 719, 730. I will have, through the manager, have his team put together an email that will be presented at the commission meeting so we can clarify what is developable for the current standards, the zoning standards that we have here in the city. Okay?
Thank you. And I will also send the 3 communications that I received from the city about that 719.
Okay, but
I think that
we're gonna get a clear cut answer. Okay? So we'll have that resolved. No worries. It'll be in the next commission. Mr. Clerk, can you do me a favor and make sure that that gets addressed in the next commission meeting, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay? Those 2 issues, I want an answer on that in the next commission meeting. Okay? So, with that being said, we have no more public comment. Nobody else would like to speak?
That's it.
Dr. Bernal, we got to finish off on a good note.
Thank you very much. Here is a suggestion that I'd like to ask that I think will increase the good feeling between the citizens and the commission. When we get a notification now, it says clearly across the top, a courtesy notification. This is insulting. It says clearly, we don't have to do it. We're just good guys, right? And we don't feel like it. We don't have to do it. We may not tell you. Why do we have such a language? Why don't we eliminate courtesy?
Doctor, I don't take offense to that.
I do.
I mean, we just like you and I meet on a regular basis in my office hours, and people walk in very frustrated, in regards to issues, and we're there to help them the best that we can. I don't know why it says courtesy, but at the end of the day, I think we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that we're as transparent as possible.
Save the word and just tell us notification,
I think, in all honesty, I think a courtesy notice is kind of a term of art. It's important to specify that it's not a legal notice.
Not legally required, right?
Lawyers use courtesy notice a lot when something's not legally noticed. Why we have, I don't know.
Well, we'll take it under advisement. And listen, I don't have an issue. If that's something that will satisfy you, we can always change it.
And we'll improve the notices.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
As an act of courtesy.
Okay.
It's a courtesy.
Commissioners, Mr. Vice Mayor, are there any other comments? Any other requests besides the requests that I've made from staff through the manager in regards to the next commission meeting? Anything else? We're good? All right, before we close, I want to say thank you to our staff. I want to thank our city manager. I want to thank our city attorney staff. I want to thank the entire zoning department, Surami Cabrera, Ramon Trias, our clerk. Thank you for doing your best to put something together that really clarifies an issue that was a little bit vague and where the city had made an error, and we're here to correct that error. So I hope that the residents walk away happy, knowing that the city is going to do everything in their power, and we're going to correct this issue. You obviously have 5 votes here, and it'll come to the commission in March. What day in March, Madam City Attorney?
March 8th is our first commission meeting.
March 8th. So we'll have the first reading there if you'd like to join us, and you'll see the fruits of your labor and this error corrected. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful evening. God bless. This meeting is adjourned.